the official story is diplomacy.
Mm.
The headlines this morning are popping champagne because President Trump stood at a podium and promised not to use military force to buy Greenland. He literally said, "I won't do that." Okay. And the markets, well, they exhaled. But we pulled the actual intelligence reports, the trade dockets, the raw data behind that soundbite. And when you do the math, the story isn't diplomacy. The math screams extortion.
This is Neural Pulse. Let's analyze.
We really need to unpack what happened on January 21st, 2026. Because if you're just skimming your feed, you think we dodged a bullet. But looking at the source material we have today, from tariff schedules to shipping manifests, the bullet didn't miss. It changed caliber. The Atlantic Alliance didn't die with a bang. It died with a real estate offer.
That is the correct assessment. The data supports a much grimmer reality than the relief rally suggests. We're calling this the Greenland Doctrine in the briefing. While the media focuses on the lack of an invasion, which is, frankly, a terrifyingly low bar for success, the actual mechanism here is an economic siege. The ultimatum stands.
Okay, walk us through the mechanics of that, because siege implies something physical, ships blocking a harbor. But we're talking about money, tariffs. How does that actually work?
It's a fiscal siege, but the effect is kinetic. The ultimatum delivered to Denmark and its NATO allies, specifically the UK, France, Germany, it's binary. Negotiate the sale of Greenland or face a 10% tariff across the board starting February 1st.
February 1st. That's days away. In trade terms, that is effectively immediate.
It is immediate. And the escalation clause is the crucial detail that, most analysts are missing. If there is no movement by June 1st, that tariff ramps to 25%. This fundamentally changes the nature of the relationship. In a traditional alliance, trade disputes are handled through arbitration, through the WTO, over years. Here, the United States is essentially saying, sell us your sovereign territory or we will systematically dismantle your export economy.
It's a shakedown. It's protection money. And the market reaction on January 20th, before the so-called relief, it seems to have sniffed this out. We saw gold hit numbers that, well, they don't even look real on a chart.
$4,859 an ounce.
Nearly $5,000 gold. That isn't investment strategy. That is the universal language of panic. That's people betting the currency itself is losing the script.
Precisely. Gold is the hedge against chaos. When you see gold move that vertically, it means institutional capital believes the treaties holding the fiat system together are, dissolving. And the political fallout confirms it. You have German Chancellor Merz, who didn't just disagree at Davos, he physically left.
He walked out.
He refused to sign their Board of Peace declaration, which was supposed to be the capstone of the whole summit, and he flew home. When the leader of Germany walks out of the world's premier diplomatic forum, the structure is fractured. Reduced to texting Trump directly. The formal channels, State Department cables, ambassadorial meetings, they're gone. The structure of NATO, that foundational idea that an attack on one is an attack on all. It's being rewritten in real time. It has mutated into sell us your assets or we destroy your economy.
It's the monetization of the safety net. We grow up thinking these treaties are written in stone or blood. This week proved they're written on invoices. If you can't pay, the protection expires. And that's just the North Atlantic. If we pivot the map, the silence is even louder in the Middle East.
A digital Iron Curtain.
Right. We have reports coming out of Iran. And to be clear, this isn't a slow internet day. This isn't your provider going down. This is a nation of 90 million people being erased from the digital map.
The metrics are staggering. As of January 21st, we're tracking over 280 hours of total internet blackout. We monitor IPv6 traffic. That's the modern protocol that runs the global internet. Traffic from Iran is down 98.5%.
Hold on. 98.5. That's not a filter. That's not censorship where you block a few sites.
Yeah.
That is the plug being pulled.
It is total isolation. And usually people find workarounds, VPNs, satellite internet. But the regime anticipated that. Starlink is being actively jammed. We're seeing reports of 40,000 connections blocked. They're using advanced Russian jamming tech to ensure nothing gets in or out.
So what's happening inside that darkness? If we can't see the traffic, how do we know the cost?
We have fragmented reports from ground sources, people who managed to leak data before the jamming intensified. The regime calls it war conditions. The human cost it's difficult to verify, but estimates range from 6,000 to 18,000 dead. Economically, the country's bleeding 500 billion pedomans per day.
That number is so abstract. What does 500 billion pedomans a day actually look like for the average person in Tehran?
It means the economy has stopped. You can't process payments. You can't manage logistics. Food distribution halts because inventory systems are down. It's a man-made famine of resources. Small businesses just collapse instantly.
And here's the thing that really chills me looking at this file. The West is looking at charts. We're worried about the price of oil, about our Amazon deliveries. Meanwhile, the global community, the UN, the institutions we built specifically for this, they are watching in silence.
Silence is the key word. Russia and China are providing political cover, blocking resolutions, but the Western powers are simply disengaged. The silence is the sound of the old world order failing. They are letting it burn.
That's the pattern here, isn't it? The institutions are paralyzed. NATO is being held for ransom. The UN is ghosting a humanitarian crisis. And that paralysis extends to Asia. The briefing mentions the Asian decoupling, but this feels different. Different than the usual trade war talk.
It is very different. This is what we call the divide and conquer phase. We need to look closely at the triangle between China, Japan, and the United States. China has cut rare earth exports to Japan.
Rare earths, just to clarify, these aren't just rocks. These are the elements in everything from EV batteries to missile guidance systems. You can't build high-tech without them.
Correct. They are the vitamins of modern industry. And exports to Japan are down 8% month over month. Now, that might sound small, but in a just-in-time supply chain, 8% is a catastrophe. It's a bottleneck that stops the entire line. Japan is effectively being strangled. They're panic buying. Imports are up 31.4% year over year, just trying to stockpile.
But this is where the alliance assumption kicks in. Japan is America's key ally in the Pacific. They host U.S. bases. Surely, with China squeezing them, the U.S. is stepping in.
That is the critical detail in this report. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent was asked about this. His response was chilling. He said U.S. supply is, quote, immune and proceeding as expected.
Immune. That is a very specific choice of words.
He didn't say, we stand with Japan. He didn't offer to share the stockpile. He essentially said, we are fine. The implication is devastating. The U.S. has secured its own supply chain and is leaving Japan to face the chokehold alone.
That shatters the United Front myth. It says, we secured our boat, good luck with yours.
Completely. It's the end of an integrated global strategy.
This is what I mean when I say the world you think you live in is gone. NATO allies threatened by the U.S., Japan abandoned by the U.S., Iran going dark with no intervention. The Team America savior narrative, it's over. It's every nation for itself.
And that fragmentation is not just geopolitical. It is happening economically, right down to the consumer level. We need to transition from the map of the world to the balance sheet of the average household, because the report highlights a collapse that signals the end of the K-shaped economy.
You're just talking about Saks Global.
Saks Global filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
And look, I know some listeners might roll their eyes. Oh no, my designer handbag. It sounds trivial compared to we are in Greenland. But you have to understand the scale here. This isn't just a shop closing.
It is a $10 billion entity collapsing, under $2.7 billion in debt. But the reason this matters to everyone is what it says about the wealth effect.
Right, the economic theory that's held everything up for the last few years. Explain that.
The thesis was that even if the middle class is struggling, the rich will keep spending. The K-shape meant the bottom leg goes down, but the top leg goes up. The wealthy carry the economy.
So the bet was the top 10% would buy enough $5,000 purses to keep the GDP looking good.
Exactly. That bet has failed. Saks proves that even the rich have stopped spending enough to cover the leverage. The aspirational shopper is dead, and the truly wealthy are closing their wallets. And the contagion is real. Saks owes Chanel $136 million. They owe LVMH $26 million.
Those are massive unpaid invoices. That's inventory that was delivered and just never paid for.
And it trickles down. Vendors, the lighting companies, the security firms, logistics, janitorial services, they haven't been paid in 18 months.
18 months.
18 months. Imagine running a small business and not getting a check for a year and a half from your biggest client. If the luxury giants can't get paid, the liquidity crisis is real. The fire is under the door of the consumer economy.
So the safety net of alliances is gone. The safety net of the wealthy consumer is gone. And now the safety net of, well, actual safety. Our technology.
This is where the World Economic Forum's latest report becomes terrifyingly relevant. For years, the buzzword was ransomware. We were worried about hackers locking up files. That is no longer the top threat.
It's evolved. The report highlights a shift to something much more insidious.
It has. The new threat is AI-enabled fraud and deepfakes. But more physically dangerous is the electronic warfare spillover. We're seeing GPS spoofing up 500%.
500%. And we aren't just talking about your Google Maps taking you to the wrong coffee shop here.
We are talking about aviation. 1,500 flights per day are having their navigation systems corrupted.
Think about that. You're on a plane, maybe flying home. The pilot's instruments are lying because of electronic warfare happening on the ground below.
It is the fog of war bleeding into civilian life. These jets rely on GPS for location, for timing, for synchronization. When you spoof that signal, you are blinding the aircraft's logic systems. It forces pilots to fly manually in an airspace designed for automation.
In our digital defenses, are we upgrading fast enough? Because if GPS is vulnerable, what about our data?
Quite the opposite. Our digital defenses are obsolete. Look at the Raga breach. 10.2 million users exposed. Do you know why?
Why?
They used unsalted MD5 hashing to protect passwords.
Okay, for anyone who isn't a cryptographic expert, what is MD5 hashing and why is unsalted basically criminal negligence in 2026?
Think of it like a lock on your door. Modern encryption is a biometric vault. MD5 is a padlock from the 1990s. It's ancient tech. Salting is adding random data so every lock is unique.
So unsalted means?
It means everyone with the same password has the same lock. If a hacker cracks 1234556, they instantly unlock everyone else who used 123456. They use a pre-made list of keys and lock millions of accounts in seconds.
It's like using a master key you posted on a billboard 20 years ago.
Exactly. In cybersecurity, it's the Stone Age, and we saw McDonald's India hacked by the Everest Group. The system cannot protect you. Your pension depends on a market that's breaking. Your safety depends on planes that can't trust their GPS. Your identity is protected by code a teenager could crack.
It feels like we're seeing a comprehensive retreat, a retreat from the idea that everything is under control. And what's fascinating, and maybe the most disturbing part of this deep dive, is we're seeing this reflected in culture. Even fashion, which usually sells fantasy, is starting to sell survival.
The report calls this fashion as armor. If you look at Paris Fashion Week, January 2026, the mood has shifted entirely.
Right, take Louis Vuitton. Usually their shows are big parties, celebrities, bright colors. What did they put on the runway this time?
They presented Drafthouse, a prefab house, but essentially a bunker. The theme was future dandy, but the aesthetic was architectural safety. It wasn't about showing off wealth, it was about hunkering down, creating a fortress.
A luxury bunker. I am rich enough to survive.
Precisely. And look at Dior. The H-line. Minimalist. No spectacle, just structure. Le Maire explicitly focused on everyday wear as a tool for survival. Practical fabrics, movement, protection.
See, that's the tell. Artists, designers, they feel the vibration before the earthquake. They're designing clothes for bunkers and reality, not for galas. They know the party is over.
It creates a consistent picture. From the breakdown of NATO to the bankruptcy of Saks to the fashion on the runway, it all points to one thing: the withdrawal of protection.
Which brings us to the hard pivot. Strategist's voice in our source material has a monologue that we need to confront. The uncomfortable truth that ties this all together.
The assassin's blade.
Yeah, we've been trained for decades to ask what will the government do or what will the Fed do. We assume there's a committee somewhere fixing the problem. But the era of outsourcing your survival is over.
Look at the evidence. Japan is alone against China's resource chokehold. NATO allies are alone against U.S. tariffs. Iran's citizens are alone in the dark.
So the question changes. When the grid fails, or the currency devalues, or the GPS goes down, the only government left is you.
It forces a shift in mindset. You have to stop asking, what will they do? And start asking, what will I do?
Exactly. Are you just a victim waiting for the next tariff, the next blackout, the next hack? Or do you take ownership? The source material uses a very intense phrase, warlord of your own life. No, that's dramatic, and I don't mean go buy a tank. But the sentiment is real. It's about executive authority over your own existence.
It means autonomy. It means realizing that the vacuum is here. The systems you relied on are retracting.
The vacuum is here. And as the strategist says, interpret the silence accordingly.
It's a sobering thought. We're used to noise, to assurances, to a press secretary saying everything is fine. But the signal from January 2026 is that the silence is the message. The cavalry isn't coming.
So what does this mean for you right now? If you're listening to this, you're informed, you know about the Greenland Ultimatum, the Saks collapse, the GPS spoofing. You are ahead of 99% of the population.
Knowledge is the first step of that autonomy. If you know the supply chain is breaking, you prepare. If you know the digital safety net has holes, you secure your own data. If you know the wealth effect is a hallucination, you adjust your own finances.
It's about becoming anti-fragile. The world is getting more chaotic. The old alliances are becoming transactional. I won't invade you if you sell me your island, is the new diplomacy.
And I won't ship you resources if you side with my enemy is the new trade policy.
Right. So the final thought I want to leave you with, something that wasn't explicitly in the text but screams out from between the lines, is about trust. Who do you trust when the institutions fold?
Trust becomes the most valuable currency. When you can't trust the GPS or the bank or the treaty, you have to trust your local network, your community, your own preparation.
Precisely. The macro is falling apart. The micro is all that's left. So look at your own bunker, your finances, your digital security, your mindset. Is it ready for the reality check?
Neural pulse. Clarity in a complex world. Decide your move.